Are you on edge? Come on. We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs bi-monthly on MaximizeU.life and iTunes. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and courageous conversations about pushing boundaries, exploring our rough edges, and walking between the worlds of what is and what is yet to be. Join me, Sandra Bargman, on the edge of every day on MaximizeU.life. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome to the Edge of Every Day, now at MaximizeU.life and streaming on your favorite podcast platforms. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Every Day is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we're resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times. We cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult. And silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So thanks again for tuning in. Today, we are live in the hive with renowned astrologer and author Heather Roan Robbins for this episode entitled STARCODES, Astrology for Choice, Change, and Nurturing Intuition. Whether you are a curious newcomer to astrology or a seasoned pro, Heather's teachings, grounded insights, compassion, and sense of humor all serve to bring greater clarity and deeper understanding. As always, in each episode of The Edge of Every Day, my intention is to engage in the art of courageous conversation. And how apropos for today. For it can be said that the ancient wisdom of astrology itself reflects a powerful conversation with the complex cosmic intelligences of the universe. So with that, it's time to introduce our guest. Heather Roan Robbins is a ceremonialist, spiritual counselor, author, and a practical, intuitive, choice-oriented astrologer and palmist with 30-plus years experience. She's been on a lifelong interfaith spiritual search and has had an intuitive counseling practice since 1978. She is the author of the hot off-the-presses book, STARCODES, Navigate Your Chart with Choice-Based Astrology, published by Hay House. The STARCODES Astro Oracle Deck, Moon Wisdom, and Everyday Palmistry. She has been writing the weekly column STARCODES Daily Astro Weather for 30 years. She works with a team to make astrology accessible to the public through talks, workshops, and their regular podcast, Access Astrology, on Blog Talk Radio. Welcome, Heather Roan Robbins.
Well, hello, Sandra. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I realize as you're talking, it's over 40 years experience now. But
I know. I was looking back on my other notes and I was like, Okay, well, we'll
Years
play around
experience.
with some years.
We'll move that along. And you could say even longer because I did my first astrological calendar when I was 11 with little
Oh
potato stamps.
my.
So yes,
Oh my goodness. Well, I love, listen, so how I know Heather, before I dive into that, because I would love to ask you to tell the story of how you got into astrology.
Okay.
But can we do that quickly? Because there's so many that I taught. So folks listening, Heather Roan Robbins was the first person that I interviewed on the Edge of Every Day when I debuted this podcast 3 years ago. I just knew that Heather was the person that touched in and brought together so many of the tendrils that were coming together for me to even do the Edge of Every Day and to turn it into, which was a solo show, and to turn it into a podcast. So she was the natural person. And because of what she does, and because she's so much fun and so practical and glorious, she was that person. And as I was saying in our pre-chat before we got on, I watched that in preparation for today and I was all weepy. It was so cute. It was really sweet. But yes, tell the story of how you got into astrology, and then I'll ask my questions that I love to ask
Gladly.
all my guests.
Now, my family is rather horrified that I was studied astrology, but I am. My father was an abstract mathematician. He's a topologist. He invented a field called topological dynamics. And my
Wow.
mother's a psychiatric nurse.
Hmm.
And if you put the abstract mathematician into a blender with the psychiatric nurse, you get an astrologer. At least I thought so. So starting
Perfect
at a
sense.
yeah, perfect sense. As starting very early in my adolescence, I would have dreams, and as if I was remembering it, I would have dreams about the elements and about the symbols for the elements, and about astrology. And then I went to a boarding school in Pennsylvania, George School, back when they had telephone operators, and that's how old, that the telephone operator at the school was the niece of a famous astrologer. And I saw that Reagan's astrologer, Carl Reiter, not that I liked him in particular, but she was interesting. And she had all of these books that she could do the charts and ran the charts of all the teachers. And I noticed that with her books, with this information, she was a good counselor, better than the school psychologist. Without the books, she was a nice lady, but she was no great reserve of wisdom. So it was something in the tool that turned her good intentions and gave her the tools to be really helpful. So one day she said, "Hey," to two teachers, they were walking by while I was helping her out and pumping her for information. She said, "Could you guys be a little careful this weekend? There's some strange transits. Just be a little careful." And she said, "I'm a little worried about them. These tough transits are talking to their charts." One was an elderly man who was the drama teacher, and he died on stage of a heart attack at 84. The other one was a young man who fell down the stairs and broke a limb. And I said, "Tell me, teach me."
I'm in.
And I absorbed everything I could. And that back in the day then, she'd sent me to a bookstore in New York City that you had to go up 2 flights, knock on the door without a name on it. And there were rooms and rooms of occult books, very different than it is now.
Yeah.
But then I bought, an ephemeris, which is a table of where all the plants were. And wherever I went as an adolescent and young adult and in the human resources field and doing many other things, I brought my ephemeris and I looked up the planets of the people that I met. Now, I let them teach me what those places meant rather than thinking I know about them because of where these are. I said, let me watch what happens with them, who they turn out to be, how do they need to communicate, what makes them feel at home, and then put that into their chart. That taught me so much. So that's how I started. I started working with it professionally. And again, I had a teacher later on in high school from India who was a palmist who taught me some of the basics. And I just started soaking up. I saw some of their stuff work. I also started taking handprints of my friends. And I
The
could see that
palmistry.
when they made a change in when they made a major decision, like stop doing drugs, or, you know, I think I'm going to go do this dangerous thing, you could see the lines in their hands change. And that the river of their life, it doesn't show you everything that's going to happen, but it shows you the effect that your
Choice.
choices are making on your life.
Mm.
So once I could see that, and I saw people's lifelines clear up, I saw them cloud over, I saw them grow longer, I saw them get shorter, depending upon, not hugely, but definitely, especially in the adolescence when your future is so malleable. And I looked at the prints and watched that as a way not of defining people, because there's no point in defining people. It's always up to you.
Yeah.
Every symbol in the palmistry, every symbol in astrology has 180 degrees of expression.
Yeah.
That's where my choice-based approach comes in.
I
It
love
is
this.
always up to you. You don't get to choose. Like, once you're born, you set a pattern in motion. But that pattern, how you respond to those symbols, free will and grace changes it completely.
Well, God, I so love the whole choice-based thing, because I get so annoyed with I know maybe more than the average person does, and so but I'm definitely an astrological layman. But I would never poo-poo it in a way that I'm shocked that in 2024 we're still poo-pooing it. I came across a great great quote from Annie Lamott, who said, I'm an Aries. Although I do not believe in astrology, I think this is exactly the right sign to have been born under.
Exactly.
So Aries moon
Exactly.
too.
And
I
what I'd say is, do not use it as a cheap excuse to not do your homework or to
Yeah.
make assumptions about other people.
Bingo. That great. Because my question was, what do you say to the poo-pooers and the people who think that it's divining the future, when indeed it's just reading the
Either
patterns.
extreme bothers me. You
Right.
know, I want people to take it in. I talk about this with any intuitive stuff.
Yeah.
Bring it up and put it on your front porch. Don't take it into your soul until you've really examined it and tried it on and see what works for you.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, even if the divination is true, but what you're hearing is somebody's interpretation of the divination, and that's based on their own psychological homework. How clear is their lens? When they interpret, but they can tell you something. Put it on your front porch. Don't throw it out, but don't take it in until you've said, is this useful for me to take in?
Yeah.
So that's how I ask people to take it, whether it's their own intuitive process or somebody else's reading on them.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your family was mortified. Did they ever come around?
Yes, there was, my mom in and out because she was kind of wildly psychic and hated to admit it, but it was pretty funny. But my father was, more difficult, but he gave me a book on the history of astrology, which was a
Love
real
it.
turnaround for him. And he was impressed that other people were impressed by me. But a couple of times, I mean, very early on, I looked at him like, oh, your teeth are bothering you, are they? Did they bother you when you were 14 and 21 and 28? And he went, hmm. And, um, there were many things. I mean, he was such a pure type, 4 planets in Scorpio.
Oh yeah.
But he was a lovely, responsible man, but very, 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 very private. So I would say something like that, and he would just scowl and then walk out of the room. But I noticed that many of his students, because he oversaw, PhD thesis, many of his best students all had, I was sneakily getting their birth info, not telling them why, and that they have a Mercury Saturn square or conjunction or opposition, and that's usually a mind that is unusually rigorous, has stick-to-itiveness, sees things through, can be a little on the obsessive compulsive side, can hold on, and you have to be careful how much they hold on. That's up to them. But it's the people who finish the book, finish the dissertation and have a certain rigorousness of mind. Let me see the positive sides of that. It was really, it was interesting that they all showed
all had it. Yeah.
examples of it.
And as well as him, I rest assured. Wow. Okay, so we're gonna, that's completely fascinating. We're gonna back up and ask those questions that I love to ask all of my guests. So Heather, what identity do you lead with?
As in the world, I am a spiritual seeker, and I hope to be a spiritual helper and support. The tools that I use for that are my interfaith ministry, astrology, writing, my regular column, my ability to listen and to learn, my intuition, and all the other tools in my intuitive box. But I would say, first, I am asking to be present to the other. Someone asked me once, I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I would like to be the counselor on Star Trek, but I can't. But because I can't get out to space yet. But what can I do to be that level of helpful and be of service to the world?
Beautiful. She mentioned, Heather just mentioned she's an interfaith minister, and that's where I first met her. Heather had just gone through the program at the new seminary for interfaith ministries and had begun teaching there. And had just discovered that I wanted to go to seminary and was looking into where I might attend. And I went to an open house that Heather was a part of and that she spoke in. And I looked no further than the new seminary for interfaith studies, had a wonderful time, and Heather companioned me and mentored me and cheerled me through that process, and was a wonderful friend and mentor and star in all that I was looking to create in my journey as well. So thank you for that. Yeah.
It was wonderful watching you step into that.
Yeah, it was.
One thing you asked me earlier, and I wanted to come back to, was what do I do with real doubters? And I asked them if they could, I say, oh, are you a religious doubter? And they said, what do you mean? Is doubting your religion? In other words, are you not willing to question your doubt?
I love it.
And some people are, because they said, no, my mindset is such that I can't really believe in anything outside of my mindset.
Bingo.
So if I'm a scientist, that's all there is.
Right.
If I'm, Catholic, that's all there is. Let me understand that. If so if that's your belief system, and I'm going to leave it that, but let's call that your belief system. Do you have any evidence that it's not true? No, you don't, because you haven't investigated. So you have no scientific evidence, because most of the time, every scientific study done to disprove astrology has backfired.
Love this.
If that is their belief system, I'm not going to argue with them on that.
Yeah, and why bother? I mean, we really see that play out on the political landscape today, don't we?
Yep.
But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, at least not yet. So my other question is, what worlds do you walk between?
I walk between, my mate is also a science educator, and between the rigorousness of science, which I find beautiful and fascinating.
Me too. I'm married to a scientist.
Yeah, and the metaphysical world. And I'm looking for the intersecting set. I'm looking for what they have in common. Yeah. So I walk between the practical and the intuitive. When I lived in Santa Fe, I was considered a very pragmatic astrologer, which sounds like an oxymoron to the rest of the world. But there it was very much, there were people that were in those days way out there. And I was considered, how do we use this on a daily basis? The metaphysics is beautiful. And how do you help improve your life? How do you help you make better choices tomorrow with this? And understand your soul with this.
Well, and that's the perfect seg into the book. I mean, that is what you, in everything that you do, your realness and your pragmatism. Go girl. I have mine here too, with my chart stuck in it as well, because I'm going through it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm following directions well. Yeah, no, that's the pragmatism, the practicalness, the realism, I love
Compassion.
the compassion, the humor. Yeah, all of that. Well, that's why I asked you on the show the first time, and because people were like, do you want to have an astrologer on for your first show? I'm like, yes, I do. Because my show is called The Edge of Every Day. And she is the epitome of bringing edges together so that we understand, demystify, have a courageous conversation around things that people might find difficult.
Thank you.
So, anyway, so yeah, so tell us about your book.
So
Congratulations. It
thank
just
you.
dropped.
Yesterday. It dropped it just this week. And it is, I started off, I've been seeing clients for 40 some years. And I've wanted to give people, this is the book that I've wanted to give my clients. They say, well, where do I start learning about astrology for me? And I couldn't really, there were some wonderful ones, Stephen Forrest, The Inner Sky. There's been some good ones. I love Carolyn Casey's work, but I didn't find anyone that I could say, here, just read this. This is a good framework. It'll help you walk in. It'll be available, but not simplistic. And how do we make it clear, transparent, and work on all the levels? Because I think of astrology as a language that talks about the symbolic connection between how you stub your toe, what your feelings are, what your metaphysics are, how you interface with the rest of the world. But I wanted to start off. Most people say, I can't do that. I don't understand the words. It's too complex a language. But I think every field has a language that's complex. I just have to know it.
Yeah.
But so I made the Astro Oracle cards, and there's 20, there's 56 of those. And, they limited me. I could have gone 70. But they're astrological terms that people can pull a card because they're powerful symbols, and pull a card for an event, and it will help you know, like an oracle card. It helps you just, what is the synchronicity of that moment? What's the medicine you need? What will help you understand the problem? There are many different ways of using them, but if you just pull a card every now and then because you need a little extra information, you learn the language. You learn how the language of astrology painlessly.
Yeah.
And so for people that are, professional astrologers, they can just go ahead and use the deck. For those that, but they might be interested in how I interpret it in a oracle divination form with the little book that comes with it. Or they can just use it, and learn as they go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I organized the book along the same format as I did the booklet that went with the cards. So it's easy to refer back to. The more you know about astrology, the more the cards make sense. And so they work together. But
It's interesting that you did a deck first before a book. I love that.
It's like learn the language and open yourself up to the symbols. Now, how do you apply that to your chart, to the astrology of the moment, to what's going on in the sky?
Yeah. A beautiful gift for those who are for your clients, those who want to know more. But I can't help but see in all that's written the wonderful way, your wonderful way of speaking about the story and speaking about the mythology, and another reason why you're so good at this, and the storytelling and the weaving the tendrils together, that even seasoned astrologers will get great depth from this book, because as you said, it's not simplistic. It really is going into the heart. But each thing that you said, I really want to focus on the choice-based, because I think this is the demystifier, is that every moment you are not divining the future. None of this is about speaking about the future. You're reading patterns. So let's talk about when astrologers say it's a pattern, it's a pulse, it's a pattern. Expound on that and expound on the 3 ways that you can deal with each aspect or planet or pattern.
Gladly. So, and again, the other people that I wrote the book for were students that learn little bits here and there and want to kind of have a congruent framework to build them on. But so the pattern, as I mentioned, every planet, every placement, every sign has a gift, it has a practical side, and it has a challenging end. So it's a symbol. If you go back to the Greek mythology, but you can go to the mythology of every culture in the world, their gods and goddesses, their archetypes will have, a sharp or difficult edge.
Mm-hmm.
They will have the practical things. Are they in charge of the ocean or fire or lightning? So they have the practical stuff, or, car accidents or trees. They're connected to something practical, and they have their gift, their divine gift.
Mm-hmm.
What we often find is that there's an expression in psychology that your gift is found in your bad habit, and your bad habits are found in your gift. It's like, are you using this well? If you don't, you may overuse it, or you may have trouble with it.
Mm-hmm.
We think of the rock singers who choked to death, or Beethoven who went deaf. Like, you can overuse some part of yourself, but often you find that if you form an expression of it, it forms a gift rather than an impossible thing. One movie I like that talks about this for me it's a Hungarian movie called Hanusin. It's kind of not a new one, but it talks about you following a man right before World War II and during World War II who was, discovered he was a hypnotherapist, but he just had the ability to mesmerize people and help them out of pain during World War I. And he helped them heal and recover. And then he developed a magic act with it. And then he had to how do I use this for good and not make people do things they don't want to do? Then they mention, oh, you're born on the same day as Hitler. And you see two people with this ability to mesmerize their audience, one using it to heal and one to run the world in a negative way. But it was the same skills with different choices.
Mm-hmm.
Often I will ask a client, students, someone's just walked into your office and here's their chart. And I'm putting up the chart of, multiple killers or Charles Manson or something like that, because there were plenty of people born that day, probably nearby, that chose to use those skills very differently.
Yeah.
Or Albert Schweitzer, who looks like he could have been a bastard, but he wasn't. He started healing leper colonies. He took himself out of places where he might get in trouble and put all that willfulness into helping heal a very vulnerable population. That was his choice. But the more you map those patterns in you, the more you can direct them in a positive way. I found this really helpful with my children, both of who had some special needs, and how do we direct this energy in a way that works for them, because it can be really challenging and they're not able to say yet what their challenges are. So I found that very helpful. But it's also, so the pattern, we think of the pattern, do the planets make us do anything? No. If you're walking by a fence and you see horns on top of the fence, do you put your foot underneath that fence? Probably not. And it's not because the horn will hurt your foot, but whatever's moving that horn also is moving the hoof.
Yes.
And we can't see it. It's mysterious. And I think of that a lot as there are big patterns that are happening in the world that we can be humble about, but we can see correlation. And that helps us acknowledge and work with those correlative patterns. You can often do, even without knowing anything about astrology, divination by headlines. The same things that are affecting our daily life or the emotional, political milieu that we walk through every day are affecting third world countries, the Middle East, and a mess. When you see major battles going down, you might want to avoid your ex. You see, it's a feisty day, there are 3 volcanoes going off. Maybe I need to not put myself in places where my temper gets tested. Or, it's flooding everywhere. It's raining, it's flooding. Why am I crying all the time? That those same metaphors can come through, and it can help you see, the headlines just give you a hint about the psychic stew, the emotional milieu that we're all living in.
Yeah, the unconscious.
And then you can work with it.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about star codes, your astro weather, daily weather. I mean, that's what you just talked about it you've written about this for 30 years. I can imagine that having to do that, to write about what's coming, unbelievable teaching exercise. I mean, what you learned about these patterns pulsating through the cosmos and through each of us. So tell us a little bit about the star codes writing.
So for the last 30 years plus, I have been writing every week, first for a newspaper in New Mexico, and then several websites. You can find it. Just go Star Codes. You'll probably find it online. And it Medium has it, that I imagine, I look at the planets and I see the energy fields for the next week, and then I try to condense it and put it in a symbolic form that will not limit you, but because I will always live it out. So if I say everybody's going to be miserable this day, who's miserable? So I have to always put the choice in there. Always give room for something positive to be done with it, because there is always room for choice. Something positive. Yeah. Always choice. But when I can say the mood of the day, and because I don't have a lot of space, I have to stay a little vague sometimes. But when I read what I wrote about the year of 2001, or I wrote about the year, because I also write a yearly overview for We Moon Calendar, or what I wrote about, the COVID year, 2020, I was right on about those. Like, this is going to be a year, guys. And when we look, when I wrote about each of the weeks where things were difficult, I was right on if you look at the symbolic pattern. And no terrible things didn't have to happen, but they did. When 9/11 and the chart of 9/11 on the chart of America is pretty intensely powerful series of aspects that talk about a great challenge and coming in from abroad and affecting us and helping us rethink what is important to us. So again, I don't say, oh, that's why it happened, because I don't think that's all that useful. I think we really have to watch out for new age fascism. Oh, that's why. Oh, you'll never do anything. I'm like, well, I don't know why it happened. The big universal soul patterns are bigger than I can see from this lifetime. But we can talk about how to use these aspects for the best. I could not have predicted what happened with 9/11, though I could talk to you about the symbolic patterns. But I could say that we had to really rethink our structure, our form, and our, what was important to us as a country. And that was the pattern that was being set off then. And we can use that to just shrink back in fear or to move forward into something bigger. That's going to be up to us.
Indeed. I mean, I haven't been reading what are you sensing in patterns in today's climate, on today's landscape. I love that you have the chart for the United States. I mean, how can we speak to that right now? I mean, without going down a major rabbit hole.
That's a huge rabbit hole.
But, exactly.
There are a couple of cycles that are clear. One that's not necessarily an astrological one, but it affects astrology, which is the solar cycle. That when the sun is very active, it turns the volume up on history. Our immune systems get stronger, so we're less likely to have terrible pandemics, but we're much more likely to have war, revolution, people are just searching for new answers. So it's a roughly 11-year cycle, but it changes. You can't really predict it. Where the sun will get quiet, then it will get very active. When it's quiet, we are usually prone towards the arts and spirituality. When it's active, it's, like you've heated up the jumping beans, everybody's cooking. Mid-60s, the French Revolution, the American Revolution were all at peak times of solar activity, unusually high points. The sun was just getting active when Barack Obama came into office, and then it did not live up to its fulfillment. So that restlessness didn't get as far as we'd hoped. And then it was quieter than it has been in a long time. It was, for the Baroque period that ended in the French Revolution, it was quiet for 50 years. But during the Trump administration, there wasn't a sunspot to be found. And during that time, there was people tend to their immune system is more suppressed. You're more likely to have a pandemic because just, we're low on that. But people will put up with, like, that's terrible, but they don't necessarily do anything about it.
Right.
Right now, it is very
flaring.
active, much more active than they thought it was going to be. It's cooking this year. Everybody's restless, searching for new answers. I wish there were more choices than there are, because people want a fresh answer.
Yeah, and that's not, they can't get it.
Right. But there's, this is cooking. Trump's chart's going through a kind of a real nadir, so it doesn't,
what does that mean?
He's low energy. It's like, he's not, his chart is kind of got some, fairy dust on it, and that makes him a little Teflon Don, but it's not in that position at the moment, which I find very hopeful. But one of the other planets that planetary patterns are watching is Pluto, which takes 248 years to go around the zodiac. And it talks about power. And we see Pluto, that wasn't, as far as I understand, it is symbolically, it was not born at the same time as the rest of our solar system. It came in from the Oort belt and got stuck. So all of the planets spin on this plane. Pluto does this. And it has a wider, different take. And it died as it was and was reborn as a planet in our solar system. And it speaks to that role of death and rebirth that we have some archetype of in all of our cultures. And it's very small and it's very specific, and you don't usually feel a Pluto transit till it's right on you. But usually if you sit with an elder at the end of their life and go, tell me about these times in your life, or tell me what were the most impactful, change-filled times in your life, it is usually during Pluto transits. So it's often they're very successful right afterwards because they burned through a lot of karma and sorted a lot out during this time. So when I look at where Pluto is, what sign it's going through, and because it's a deep ellipse, it takes a little bit longer, different time periods in different places. In the 80s and 90s of last century, Pluto was inside the orbit of Neptune. It was moving very fast, right? It was in its ellipse, it cuts a corner there. And those Pluto transits, really, people had near-death experiences. But now we just sort of like contemplate the angst of the world. Yeah. So here we are with Pluto going through that pattern. How do we, with thinking of what matters? What's the use and abuse of power? What's the gift of it? What's the problem of it? What do we want to do in the face of life and death? So Pluto went through Scorpio, which rules the reproductive organs and our relationship to other people's resources, their bodies, their money, their sexuality, among other things, during the AIDS epidemic and during the savings and loan crisis. So both of those, Pluto tends to take it to the edge and then make us look at and rehab whatever it's talking to. Then after it was in Scorpio at the end, late 90s, it went into Sagittarius. At the beginning of its tour of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius symbol is that of a centaur, our human relationship to the natural world. It's a creature that was half human, half animal, and always moving, and a teacher. So the Sagittarius, when Pluto was in Sagittarius, at the beginning of it, most people did not believe in climate change. By the end, by 2008, the vast majority of people who were not in denial totally could see that climate change was a reality. Yeah. And we have been dealing with it ever since. It doesn't go away just because Pluto left there. Now it's been since 2008, it's been in Capricorn. and it brings the question of how do we structure power? What's the structure of patriarchy? Because it has related to the father in the best and worst of ways. How do we handle government and governmental systems? And it's been in there. And since then, we had a whole return of dictators from Bolsonaro.
Yes.
It's messy. Then it has just started into Aquarius last year. And Aquarius is but that's backing up into Capricorn for the fall. And that worries me. So what we're seeing is a return to, throughout Europe right now, Pluto gone in Capricorn, Aquarius, going back and forth, is bringing out real right wing.
Yeah, major conservatism. Yeah.
Extreme right wing, not conservative because they don't want to change. Extreme right wing. Right. And the role, so I'm worried with that pattern. It goes into Aquarius yet. And people are like, oh, thank God. I'm like, Aquarius talks about the rule of the people. If the people aren't educated, then the rule of the people can look kind of scary.
Yeah.
So the role of education, of free speech, of, real, quality thinking is going to make all the difference in the next 20, 30 years.
Oh, dear. Yes, indeed.
And so, it's how do we work as a group? It's going to be less about power structures of, one down, but how do we work as a tribe? How do we work as a collective? How do we work as a group?
Breaking down the hierarchy. Oof,
right. Yeah. So that's a quick run over of what I'm seeing at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. There's a lot to think about in that. Even quick. It's really juicy, and thank you. So we have been going now for 40 minutes. I feel as though we've touched on everything that I wanted to touch on, other than the lineage, the past lives. Can we do somewhat of a succinct understanding of what you do in terms of working with lineages and past lives before we get into, then we're going to pull a card and then we're going to find out where we can find you and all those good things.
Ask me a question and pull a card and I will.
Yes.
Okay.
But I want to hear about lineages, working with lineages.
Okay, we'll do maybe that next.
Okay. Do you want to do the card out? Maybe we'll combine it. I feel like I'm feeling like there's a lineage question within, because I want to talk about the Edge of Everyday podcast.
Okay. Pull me a card on that and I will. What's the specific question? Because again, when you're working with divination, I want to say this for the audience.
Yeah.
Usually if you're pulling tarot cards or you're doing anything symbolic form, it will tend to answer the question that's loudest in your head. If you think if you think you should be asking about your job, but really you want to ask about your relationship, it will answer about your relationship and you will wonder what was going on. So it's very helpful, to be careful to know what the question is that you're asking and make sure. You can ask a bunch of them, but be honest with yourself about what question you're asking. That's all.
Yeah.
So go ahead and ask me.
So the question is in the challenging times that we're in right now, the desire to keep moving this podcast forward and information that might be helpful to me in understanding how I might keep continuing getting the tendrils out, keep understanding what it is what doors need to be opened to be in service and to share more of the information that wants to tap into what wants to come forward.
Okay.
In this arena.
One card on the essence of the matter, and one card on what's the block and then one card on what's the gift. What would be the medicine?
Essence, block, and the medicine. Okay. Got him. First, the essence of the question.
Is sixth house? Hold it up a little bit
Yeah.
higher. I can't see it.
Sixth house.
Okay. Yes. Got it. And the next one, I'll read them together. So
got it.
The block, Capricorn.
That's too good.
And the gift,
Oh, I love this.
descendant. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. The essence of it, the sixth house is the house of service, health, healing, your health, how you can help other people, that it has to feel like people need to understand when you present it, how this will help them heal. And that goes back to the descendant, which is you have to make the show about them, not about you and your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you can make it about descendant, because ascendant is how you come into the world, descendant is about how other people come into your world. The more you can focus it there and on what helps their health, their work, their life, their mind-body connection, because sixth house is really about mind-body connection.
Lovely.
It's like my dailiness of my life. Every day is the dailiness of my life is a spiritual path, how that affects me going forward. The block is Capricorn, which is an interesting block. It's the gift and challenge will be found in that. So the gift and challenge of Capricorn. Capricorn is a mer goat. That means it's like a mermaid, half sea creature and half mountain goat. The mountain goats around here are a good example. We have them. I'm in Montana. And they look really silly walking on flat terrain. But they are so graceful going up and down a steep mountain that when you have a clear goal with Capricorn and you have gone down to the bottom of the ocean to get a vision and you're walking it up to the top of the chart and you're always getting there, it can be beautiful. And I think of Martin Luther King, the archetype of a good Capricorn, who had a dream and then walked it across the country to make it happen, is a beautiful example of the process with Capricorn. So that's the gift. It says, have a dream, be able to walk it. But the Capricorn can get impatient if it looks like you're just doing the same old, doing the same thing every day. It wants to know that it's climbing in the mountain. So you need to set for yourself short goals, medium goals, and long goals. How will the short goals get to, so you can go like, good job, we did this. We achieved that small goal, so we can get to the next goal, so we can get to the next goal. And feel that you're climbing the mountains step by step and can be patient with that process. If you feel like you have that big vision and you've broken it down into steps, you can be happy, like you're seeing the change, you're making a step every day, moving towards that, then you know you're going to get there. If you don't have that, or you feel like, why am I not at the top of the mountain already? Then you can get impatient with the process, and it's hard to take all those steps. Yeah. So it's like, I vision it, now what's the next step? I vision it, and now how do I take the next step? And then there's no mountain you can't climb.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, and it's impatience is like that's baked into me as an Aries. Yes. You of all people understand.
We understand. So, yes.
But that's great. And I feel that's glorious. And it's really because I do have the small steps and they are in place, and I do have the big vision in place. And
you have to celebrate the small steps once they're accomplished.
Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. That was glorious. Okay. Put those over there so I can revisit. So lineage and working and past life, and how is working with one's epigenetics and their lineage, how can that all be touched upon using astrology?
So with humility, because there's only so much you can see in the pattern. And again, I think that our soul choices are, how were we raised? What are the epigenetics, as you pointed out? What's the cellular imprint of our cultural positioning? What is, and what choices have we made? What have we been exposed to, and how do we respond to that? What we see in astrology, for instance, is The patterns, the aspects are always growing closer together. They meet, then they pull away. And from the time that they're growing closer to an aspect or a relationship or conversation between the planets, it's in a new moon, the dark of the moon, for example, the moon is growing closer and closer to the sun. They conjunct on the new moon, then they begin a new cycle. And every conjunction begins a new cycle. As it gets closer, it's finishing up the last cycle. And right before the dark of the moon is not a great time to start new things. It's a wonderful time to review, introspect, put together, plan, and then when you're moving forward, you're beginning new things. What we find is that if the aspect has already happened, that conjunction, the beginning of a cycle happened before the person was born, they may not have a story to describe what began then. If it's good things, great. If it's bad things, it can be, we don't have a story to go with it. So, but they may have something that symbolically happens. I don't think you need to necessarily know your past lives. I think you will have an experience. I've worked with people who've worked with past life regressionists who study that, who have the stories to go with it. And I might say, it looks like you left in the middle of a confrontation or a war, that you walked into a situation where your family might have been recovering from a confrontation. And they go, yes, I remember dying in a war. And I was born into a family that was in the middle of a family feud. And so without knowing anything about that, recovering from the effects of a confrontation and a war that was a smaller human-sized war gives their soul a chance to do that healing process. Now, sometimes there is no story. There are stories of people that pop in with very strong memories from other lives. But you could say, often I'll see a child that will look like what they need most is just a peace, that they came to this very boring little family in life because last life was hellacious. Yeah. And they're still having terrible nightmares. But what they need is just safety and a chance to take a deep breath and catch up. And then their soul can grow from there. But that safety was what was missing. Mm-hmm. So you can't tell too much about the story. I would send people back to past life regressionists for the story of it. Right. But I can talk about what are some of the issues that you walked in with that may or may not have been, but often are, in the family pattern. What are you hungry for? What are you working towards in this lifetime as healing? So it talks again about the symbolic, because it's a language of symbols, a mm-hmm. symbolic pattern, that the myriad stories that can pour out of those various examples. Mm-hmm. I have a favorite story of just how different examples can work with. I had two clients that go very born on the same day, very different personalities. One was a bit of a bitch. One was really, working hard in her community. And they had the same aspect that read textbook. Resources will be shared, but this will come naturally. You'll meet with strong and forceful personalities. One of them went to a charity fundraiser, met all the big spenders in the neighborhood and helped get them to contribute to this cause. And they did, and it was powerful and delightful and really sweet. Good cause. The other one didn't want to do anything like that. She was just stomping down the street after an argument, and a big guy came, knocked her down, grabbed her purse, and ran off. They both met with strong and forceful personalities. They both shared their resources, and it came naturally. They felt like they had no choice when they were there. But, so here's a pattern. They both did it, and it lived out in slightly different ways.
Vastly different ways.
Vastly different ways. But, an interestingly bit of choice there. But again, that is, that's talking about we draw to us part of how we're holding and seeing and feeling. But there are some patterns that have nothing to do with that work at the moment that we're working with.
Yeah. That are uniquely ours and not passed down.
Uniquely ours. And we have to really look at the cultural effects in astrology, that because too much has been done with well-to-do Westerners who have a European lineage, and that's the only language they know how to speak, which can sound pretty privileged.
Yeah, yeah.
And astrology is so much bigger than that. The stars are so much bigger than that. To kind of bring in mythologies from around the world and to really look at our lens as we get going, to do our own therapy or introspection, to do our own examination of cultural privilege so that we can begin to step out of it when we need to.
That is without a doubt the most gorgeous thing to say as we wrap up. To move from into today's times, move from away from the, so many of us think of, we want to know what's happening for us astrologically, when in fact we can use it moving forward collectively all the time. Heather Roan Robbins, thank you so much for being on the edge of every day. Congratulations again on your exquisite book, Star Codes. Here it is again, folks. Star Code. She's got it. Star Codes. Navigating your chart with choice-based astrology.
Available everywhere.
Excellent. That's so great. And you can find Heather at her website, roanrobbins.com, with links to her Access Astrology podcast, with links to Star Codes, the daily weather updates, how to book a session with you, how to do, if want a astrological reading, if you want to do ceremony with Heather. All of that is so beautifully. I loved visiting you. You've updated with really great pictures on your website too. I was like, oh, it's awesome. It's like hip and groovy.
I have a wonderful web lady, a web mistress, or I think of them as the temple priestesses of our modern day temple.
Yes, the Melissas.
Who's worked pretty closely with me to do this.
Oh, I love it. It really looks fantastic. Is there anything that I have left out on as to how to find you? You're all across.
And you can find me on
LinkedIn, Instagram.
I gather Instagram, and my wonderful web person takes my article and puts it in smaller chunks on Instagram, and on my professional Facebook page, Heather Roan Robbins, Star Codes, that anybody can, follow and get my daily updates.
Yeah, run. As you can tell, run, don't walk, and get a reading with Heather. Thank you again. I am just so privileged to know you, my friend, and I'm so excited for your continued success. May this book reach many far and wide.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
Yes, may it do so. I hope it just puts good information out there into the world.
Amen.
So,
amen. Thank you. And to you, my listeners, remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Until we speak again, take good care.